watch
How?
this?
How?
How? Ew, how do you watch this?
Dude, I'm gonna pee my pants.
Hi, you're listening to How Do You Watch This, a movie review podcast where each week we recommend a movie in the genre we love, but they don't. My name is Demi, and I love horror.
My name is Megan, and I love romance.
And this week I had Megan watch Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes.
Not to get confused with the books, which is the same thing
Yes.
as the movie version.
Yes, yeah. It's like you look it up online, and it's just an amalgamation of like a bunch
All
of
kinds
different.
of stuff,
Yeah, exactly. So
And
Yeah.
you have experience with the original stories, which is great.
yes, yeah. So I remembered when I was watching the movie. I think the only one that I was super familiar with was the red spot. There were
Mhm.
others that were like mildly familiar, and I remember like the bloated woman. I think that I don't remember what her story is called, the Red Room or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that drawing, but I didn't remember the story.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed that they didn't include some of my most memorable ones. You know, the
Mhm.
green ribbon not being in there is a crime, but it's fine. We'll talk about it as we go.
Yeah.
I feel like they set it up for a sequel, and I don't know if that sequel's gonna happen. Is that
Apparently, yes. So the
Uh-huh.
director recently did, oh my gosh, what's the vampire movie that just came out? I want to say it's Voyage to Demeter, but I don't think that's correct. Voyage.
I didn't even hear about this.
It is. Okay, I am right. I am a
Oh.
professional. Voyage to Demeter, which is the last Voyage to Demeter, which is the vampire Dracula
Oh,
retelling that came out kind of recently. but it
Oh,
takes
I
place
didn't-
on the ship.
oh, okay. I
Pretty
didn't
cool. Maybe
know that
I'll-
it was
Maybe
a
I'll
thing.
have you watch it.
Yeah.
But that
I'm
was
all about
very
the
new.
vamps.
Yeah, so he did that, and when asked about Scary Stories to Tell in Dark, it says that it's active, like production, like it's going to happen. So I hope
Oh.
it does. I'd be curious to see more of the stories, like maybe the Green Ribbon
Yeah. Shows up.
will be there. You know, I think there's so many cool stories in those
Yeah.
books that it'd be cool to just see more of it.
Yeah. And, you know, we have to talk about the books a little bit because it is really messed up. They were written in like the 80s.
Yes.
They're a combination of various folklore and other things.
hmm
But I just like really want to know why someone thinks that children need horror in their lives.
Well, so the books that people don't know, they were written by Alvin Schwartz, and the original illustrations were by Stephen Gammell. And there was controversy for sure. It's the 80s. There's no rules in the
Mhm.
80s, but
Mhm.
these are considered children's stories. And I actually reread some of the stories, and they are very kiddie. Like, they're not
they?
really scary at all. They're kind of silly. But there are darker themes. You know, there's death and cannibalism and murder and, you know, but like for kids. And and so there were a lot.
Murder for kids.
But yeah, there were a lot of people that were like, why is this a thing? But I think that horror is a unique and fun genre if
Mhm.
done appropriately for children. I think the worst part about these books were the images, because
Yeah.
I remember the images, like
They're
the
creepy.
the woman looking for the toe. That image like was ingrained in my head. Like that.
Really? I don't remember it.
Oh, it was like the scariest freaking image ever. And the red spot, the spider one, like that story truly was horrifying for me. But I don't know, horror is fun, but done appropriately, right? We had Goosebumps, we had Are You Afraid of the
Right.
Dark, we had this. And those are like for kids, and it's just like at least for me, it was just a fun little, like, just little spookies, you know? I don't think kids should be
Sheltered?
from horror stories. You know, I think some horror stories it's like folklore, right? You don't want kids to do certain things, and you give these little stories of like the boogeyman and things like that. And so
Yeah.
it's like a lesson, and it keeps kids thinking, and it puts like a I don't know, a character in place of something that's like scary in real life. And so I don't know.
Demi,
I
what are you
don't think
gonna
it's
teach your children. This is very German of you.
well, think of
folklore.
Krampus, right? Krampus.
Grimm's fairy tales, sort of. Don't go into the woods or the witch will get you.
I mean, sometimes these kids don't listen to anything.
Dude,
Sometimes
I don't
you have
know.
to scare them a little bit.
See, all that word for me is the fear of my parents' disappointment. And I was like, on the straight and narrow, buddy.
But it's, you know, like it could work. It could work.
I'm
And yeah, you
sure.
don't want to traumatize your kids. Like,
Yeah.
don't show them anything crazy. Don't read them anything crazy. Like, if you know, I think horror can be fun if done appropriately and well. And when we were at Barnes and Noble's for like, there was like Halloween stories for kids, and they were like, some that genuinely were kind of creepy, and I'm like,
Really?
yeah, they looked a little creepy, and I'm like, that's like kind of crazy, but it's kind of cool, and I think it's fun. So I know I'm biased completely.
I know. Yeah, a little bit.
I know this movie was intended for younger viewers, and
Yeah,
Guillermo
that's
del
very
Toro,
obvious. Yeah.
who worked on it, really wanted that, and so I think that's good. I think it's good to have.
You did
movies and
mention
shows.
Guillermo del Toro, but what did he do on the film? Because he wasn't the director.
Yeah, he co-wrote and produced it.
Okay.
So I thought he directed it because I saw his name everywhere, and then I realized he did not direct it. So he had a heavy hand in it, though.
Well, speaking of the background information of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it was filmed in or released in 2019, PG-13, so it is kid-friendly. About an hour 48 minutes, so it's not a very long watch. It's teen horror is the best way to describe it.
Yep.
And it was directed by Andre Ridal. I did look up how to say that symbol, and I believe it's Ridal.
I
would
would say that's probably correct. Yeah, it's like an O with a line through it.
Yeah, the O with the line through it, and it seems like it's an ugh.
Yeah.
Like a almost like French sounding is what
I don't
all
know
the
where that
YouTube
name
videos.
is from.
Norwegian.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Norwegian. Yeah. So I did research for one time in my life.
Love it.
All right, let me go into my retelling. So this is obviously a very simplified version. A lot of things happen. A lot of stories happen. I'm not going to go super deep unless you decide that you want to go deep into something.
Okay.
So Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is set in small town America in 1968. I was very surprised to see that it was set in more of a almost 60 years ago, almost 60 years ago, and that it was more of a vintagey feel to it, which was fun. Yeah. I think that there's definitely going to be some through lines with the election and Richard Nixon going into office. Our main cast of characters include a group of teenagers struggling with the transition into adulthood. This is obvious in their costume choices for Halloween. There is a Spider-Man that was home sewn and looks more like a spider who turned into a man. There is Perot, the comedy dell'art character who's mistaken for a clown, and a classic cutified witch. So the girl Stella does up her makeup and she puts little warts on, but it's still cute, and that is so high school. It's just like, I'm gonna be something ugly, but in the cutest way possible.
Right.
As well as their mode of pranking. The one kid, Chuck, fishes poop out of the toilet to throw at their local bully. Which honestly got to the point where I was like, I'm siding with the bully if you're throwing poop at someone. Tommy is a mean boy who always steals their candy every year. That's not cool. That's a shame. He shouldn't do that. So this year they decided to prank him, and I thought it was going to end here. They had a bag, and I think it was full of, it was like dirty laundry or eggs or something.
Underwear, dirty underwear.
Yeah, something dirty that smelled bad. And they were all upset about it, and they slammed the brakes on the car. And then the kids start throwing eggs at the car, which is like, okay, that's kind of extreme. But whatever, fine. Still no one's getting hurt yet. Then they light the bag of poopy on fire and throw it into the car, which is, why did it have to, first of all, why did it have to go on fire? Second of all, foul. Foul. That is a human body excrement. That's disgusting, and you could get hepatitis B, I think, is the hepatitis. You can get a disease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I get that it's 68, but still.
There's so many years of bullying.
Yes. I get it, but you also threw something on fire into his lap. Like, that could have gone really bad. And I thought this is where, like, he was going to crash and die. Things were going to start happening. But no, of course. Like, he's upset. He is understandably upset.
Understandably, yes.
Did he do a bad thing by stealing candy? Yes. Did they multiply it times 1 million by throwing flaming poop at him? Also, yes. But don't get it twisted. Tommy is messed up and we don't like him. And
we don't like Tommy.
Unfortunately, Ruth, Chuck's older sister, does like Tommy. She was on a date with him and was in the car when the flaming poop was launched in. Chuck did not know that she was going on a date with Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he was trying to get poopy on his sister.
Yeah.
As they run from Tommy, the three friends stow away in a random person's car when they go to a drive-in movie. In the driver's seat is a guy named Ramon. He's a transient who is stopping for the night before making his way up to Canada. He gets called a, quote, wetback, which I had to Google and learned it's a racial slur, so RIP to my search history.
I was going to say.
I was like, what does that mean? Oh, God. Yeah, not great. And he, and by he, I mean Ramon, flirts with Stella, and she decides she wants to take him to a haunted house. And we end up learning in the mix of things that Stella's mom left when she was younger, and she blames herself.
Yeah.
So the haunted house she takes him and her two friends, Augie and Chuck, to belonged to the Bellows in the late 19th century. They were a family who started up a mill operation in town and brought in a lot of wealth. They also had a secret daughter, Sarah, who they locked in their basement and who haunts the place to this day. Legend has it that if a kid comes to the house and asks Sarah to tell them a story, it's the last they'll ever hear. So Ramon finds a secret hidey hole that leads to a basement room where Sarah allegedly was kept and where Stella finds a book of scary stories. Meanwhile, Chuck is transported through space and time in a wardrobe, much like Narnia, and sees a creepy old lady and a black dog. We need to break this down at some point because this is like referenced one other time and it must be connected to a story or something. Tommy shows up to the house and locks the four kids in the basement, but Ruth is upset and she says to release them before she alerts the police chief. So Tommy throws her in the basement as well, and she lands in a spider web. Stella, like an absolute crackhead, asks Sarah to tell her a story and then proceeds to be absolutely baffled by the events that follow for the rest of the movie. This pissed me off so much. I was like, girl, you literally just said if you ask her to tell you a story, like, it's the last you'll ever hear.
Yeah, it's like the Bloody Mary in the mirror, right?
Yeah, but like at this point in time, they just got locked in a basement. Why is that her impulse? That's her first thing she wants to do is test out this scary little...
Test out the theory.
And also, I never did Bloody Mary in a mirror.
I never did either. I was too scared. But people have done it. People, that's the curiosity. It's like, oh, what would happen? What would happen? I mean, how do all these horror movies happen with teenagers, right? They do some stupid shit because they hear something. And they're like, I'm going to test it out. And then they die. So.
Yeah. Well.
Teenagers be stupid.
She messed around. She's finding out.
She's finding out for sure.
Yeah. So summoning Sarah did unlock the door for them and allows the group of 5 to escape. Ramon's car got messed up, though, by Tommy and his crew, as well as spray paint. They spray painted that slur onto it.
Yeah, it was a nice car, too. So that was really upsetting.
Yeah, really lame. So now he's stuck in town for another night, and Stella bravely offers her basement as a resting place for the man who she literally met an hour ago.
Yeah.
I can't with her. Okay.
She's a little problematic.
A little. That night, Stella begins reading the book and sees that the ink is still wet. She is, of course, completely unfazed by this. Because why? Why would she be alarmed by there still being wet ink in a book that sit in a basement for 100 years?
Immediately, I'd be like, well, I guess
something horrible's happened. Yeah. Yes.
Guess those stories are true.
Right. So we see that this story is about Tommy, who drunkenly gets lost in the cornfield by his house and ends up being turned into a scarecrow by Harold, the scarecrow that was always beating him up. I think this is one of the more popular scary stories. When I looked, because of course I looked up a little bit, and there was this one article that ranked all the scary stories in order, and they ranked this one as the number one. I personally didn't know this story before the movie, but it's
I from what I remember this one being pretty messed up, pretty like a little gruesome. Harold just murdering people and skinning, like it's making a new scarecrow. So like in the movie, he's the character is like throwing up hay and stuff and kind of transforming.
Right.
But I think in the story, like Harold like takes the skin or something. I forget. But that was definitely a creepy one. I mean, I don't like corn mazes and a creepy
you don't? I didn't know you didn't like corn mazes.
I don't like any maze things where I can get lost. So that's just me watching Children of the Corn and just that's giving myself a fear. So.
This is the thing, Demi. As someone who's not watched these scary things, I get to enjoy every ounce of Halloween and the pure parts of Halloween without being scared.
No, it's nice to enjoy those things.
No, Demi.
You never know. I'm gonna have you watch Children of the Corn.
No, that's okay. I love corn mazes. Don't ruin it for me. Don't ruin it for me.
But anyway, Harold.
Harold, yeah.
That's one of the stories that was taken. So there's two monsters in this where they're not directly from the story they're referencing, and Harold's one of those where the image matches the actual story. So, and the way they built him is that they used an old decaying pumpkin like for stomach, boards for the body, and then like an old mask, like they pictured like they would just buy like a creepy Halloween mask and it would just be decayed after so long, and so that's what his face looks like.
So then essentially Tommy becomes the scarecrow that was where Harold was, and is now seen as being missing because he's obviously not recognizable as a scarecrow.
Yeah.
Ramon is harassed over the missing boy because he's new in town and also because he's a person of color. Like it's pretty obvious they're suspicious of him. Stella is a little spooked and decide to return the book, but it ends up showing up on her dresser that night. Her and Ramon see that the next story is being written, and it's about the other member of their trio, of the OG trio, Augie. Stella walkie-talkies Augie to warn him, but he's unfazed. His story is the big toe, and this is my deleted scene. It is absolutely unfathomable that he eats a mystery stew that his mom was like, I didn't make that.
Yes.
And then despite cries that he shouldn't eat something, so he just ignores. If someone says to me, don't eat anything, especially a stew, and I'm putting a stew in my mouth, I'm spitting it out. You call me and tell me don't eat, I can wait for that phone call to end. Like, I'm hungry. I'm going to wait for the call to end. Then he proceeds to accidentally put a corpse toe in his mouth, and we learn that there's also an eyeball in the stew as well. I would have vomited until I died. That's how I would have died. Like, nothing would have ever made me feel okay again.
And it's like a big ass toe.
It's just, it's humongous.
It's disgusting. It is disgusting. That's
so gross.
So gross.
So gross. And he does not freak out enough. He doesn't freak out enough. Like, he freaks out a little bit, but not enough. I'm sorry, friend. I would be screaming, crying, throwing up, legitimately.
I think part of it too is because someone's looking for him. So I guess he's just like,
well, yeah, that
a mix of emotions,
but not great. He ends up getting dragged into the wall. And I was genuinely scared by the scene because I knew there was going to be a jump scare. I knew she was going to pop up under that bed with him. And it's still, I was ready for it, and it scared me.
So this story, the big toe is different from the character we see. She is from the haunted house story. And that character, that image is what like genuinely horrified me. Yeah.
Yeah. I did look it up and I found the picture that you were talking about. And yeah, that's a terrifying picture. It looks like an actual corpse. I hate that.
Flipping through the book and that coming up, and I like jump scared myself at the library.
Dude, it doesn't even, it looks like a photograph of like a decaying corpse. Like it is very creepy.
It's so creepy. And so Javier Botet plays her, and he's done like a few monsters. So he in Crimson Peak, he was the red ghost woman character.
Okay. Yeah.
So he played the corpse, and they pretty much painted his body, and they had like fake teeth, so it looked like it was decayed back. His teeth were sticking out, and then they just put like a green little slip on his toe so they could CGI the toe.
That's funny.
But yeah, she was extra spooky.
Super creepy looking. Stella, Ramon, and Chuck try to burn the book, but it doesn't get affected, obviously.
I should just do a bunch of burning book movies.
It seems to be a common thread
amongst
amongst yours.
Just trying to burn their troubles away.
Right. Chuck says, quote, "This is why I don't read books," which is probably the best line of the movie. I did love that.
He's so unhinged. It's like his friends like are missing, and he's just like still cracking like weird comments and jokes, and it's like,
read the room, bud.
Yeah.
So the next victim is Ruth with the red spot. That's one of the few stories I remembered from the books. Her spider bite grows and grows until it explodes with spiders. Chuck and company arrive in time to throw dirty water on her to dispel the spiders, but she's understandably distraught and brought to a mental institution.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly, I'd probably never be the same again. So
I would, this would ruin me, because it was like, it was like gross. It was huge, and then a little leg popped out. No.
God.
No.
Oh.
That, I think out of all the stories, that one genuinely, I'm like, what if that happens to me? What if I get a bit and it's actually a spider?
I'm almost convinced people have told me stories about that actually happening, whether or not they were just using more folklore and stories and being like, this happened and I was young and I believed it. But I definitely have heard people say similar things, and the idea is so unbelievably horrible.
It's the worst. Yeah.
I hate it. So the crew decides to investigate the mental facility that Sarah was in based on information given by a character my description doesn't have room to include. Sorry, Lulu. While there, they learned that Sarah was tortured because she was trying to tell people that the local children were being poisoned by mercury leaking into the water, something that was her family's fault because of the mill that they had built. However, her family wanted to hide this information and locked her away, claiming she was insane and trying to get her to change her story. While learning this, Chuck gets absorbed by a bloated white blob woman and leaves his nudie pen behind as evidence. Stella and Ramon get picked up by the police because their actions weren't legal. Stella proceeds to call her dad so that he doesn't think she ran away from home like her mom, and refuses to give any information about her whereabouts. So this poor man, it makes no sense.
Yeah, she calls him, and it's just so like, if I don't come back, I just know that I would not have left you. And it's like, why would you just say something like that?
Right.
Like, your poor dad's thinking like, what are you gonna like, I don't know, commit suicide? Like, what are you doing here? Like, what? And this poor guy, you could tell he's this sad man. He's just really going through it. He's just trying to do his best.
Yes, and he's like, your mom didn't leave you, because he's giving this like heart to heart.
Yeah.
But Stella doesn't deserve the heart to heart.
Stella,
I can't.
She's a brat, and
I don't
like, why
her.
Why are you not opening up to your poor dad? And like, he's good. He's just like, oh, you're gonna be with your friends, and like, you can tell he like wants Stella to, still have a social life and like be happy, and she's just like a brat to her.
A real brat.
She's like one of those where she's like, my life is so horrible and terrible.
Yes.
And it's like, is it like, your mom left when you were young? Like, that's really sucks.
That's really
especially if you were
sad.
close, but
but your dad is doing his best, and you are ruining his life.
Like, grow the fuck up a little.
Yeah. At the station, Stella learns that Ramon was trying to escape the draft to Vietnam. He thinks he'll be the next one to die, and he worries about how it will end because the book reads you. And that's the moment when I connected the dots between the death and the people. although I could be wrong about it. So I think that Chuck was absorbed because he was always snacking. Ruth got a pimple because she was vain. Tommy was beaten because he was a bully. Augie was killed by a story he heard as a kid. And then what's about to happen is Ramon is attacked by the Jangling Man, which is a story from his childhood as well. Does that sound like on base?
There are connections, yes.
Okay. We can talk about them after.
Yeah.
We're almost at the end. Okay. So in this process, the police officer gets killed by the creature, but Stella manages to get his keys and release herself and Ramon from the jail. Ramon tries to distract the Jangling Man and avoid death while Stella attempts to convince Sarah to stop murdering. In the end, Stella tells the story of Sarah and Sarah moves on with her afterlife. Ramon lives and goes into the war, no longer avoiding his draft. Stella and her dad spring Ruth from a mental facility somehow, and now she's on a mission to find and rescue Augie and Chuck. The end.
Yep. The end.
I will finish because I already talked about the deleted scene. The memorable scene I also mentioned, that's the spiders. I just feel like that really can't forget about the spiders. When we talk about main character and villain smash or pass, regardless of everything, even if Stella was a 25-year-old woman or a 35-year-old woman with the same behaviors, pass.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's a child, so immediately disqualified. But
no, she was lame.
She was the worst.
I think. Yeah, I don't like the group itself. Like, I feel like Ramon is the only one that was like I kind of liked. You know, he was just like this guy. He was like kind of mysterious, and he was the only one I was like, okay, I think out of all the group, like Augie and Chuck, I think Chuck maybe I liked more out of the group.
Yeah, I think Chuck I probably liked. I mean, Augie didn't really get much of anything. He was pretty short lived. Ramon was fine. I don't know. It wasn't giving a lot for me. Stella was the worst. Yeah. 0 out of 10. Would not be friends. She had great, like her look. I would have definitely tried to emulate that in the 60s. Yeah. But everything else was a no. And then villains, I mean, all of them are passes. Not a single smashable villain in this whole thing.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, my entire villain column is just pass.
We gonna find one. I feel like you had one.
I think there was one once. Yeah. One once upon a time. I'll have to go through my archives.
I think it was Robert Pattinson, Lighthouse.
Oh, yeah. I said I could change him.
Yeah. I think there was someone else too, but I forget. But it was definitely like a human man that was like normal-ish.
Not a monster. Yeah.
We'll find a monster for you.
I want to say smash, but I'm like, there's no way.
No. I'll try. Maybe that'll be the focus next time.
We'll see.
Possible smash.
Yeah. So survival chance, I gave 2. This is another one where I'm giving 2. Where the 10 out of 10 comes from, of course, I never would have gone into that haunted house. I would never, like I said it, I think I've said this in the past. I've never broken and entered in my life.
Yeah.
I would not have gone into the house. I would not have summoned the scary stories or whatever. But let's just say I made the wrong choice and I'm friends with Stella. And
and
Stella.
If you're friends and you're.
Yeah, and Stella summons it. I gave myself a 3. On the off chance that I'm able to somehow escape just in time like Ramon did. Yeah. But I don't have high hopes for myself. I'm pretty sure if I was in Ramon's situation, I would have, flight. I would have froze. I would have been like, all right.
I would have been taken out quick.
Come and get me, buddy. Would I recommend to a non-horror lover? I said no. I feel like this is definitely for people who like horror movies. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to save my hearts until we go through the fun facts.
Okay. All the facts. Okay, so we can talk about the creatures. All of them were mostly practical effects.
That's really cool.
So they really wanted to try and do that. The Jangly Man. So the person who played the Jangly Man is a contortionist named Troy James.
No.
And so like all the scenes, so the face obviously was CGI, the movement of the face, but all the walking backward and crawling and stuff, that was just a dude. Which is super creepy. And
That's so wild.
Yeah. And then the body parts were each done by different artists, and they had a different decay of rot that they had to produce. So each of the body parts are like different and gross. So that's really cool. And then the pale woman in the red room, that was also played by an actor. And the way they did the body was they wanted the fabric to look like it was like part of the skin, so it's like seamless. And
yeah, I could see that. I couldn't stand that scene because Chuck is just turning around and around and around, and he just needed to duck down and run. Like her arms were coming out. I don't know. I'm saying that after I just said I would have frozen, but
it's that one genuinely creeped me out because it is like he's turning and she's just walking towards him, and it's like, you could start running. Like, I don't know. Is she quick? Like, what is it? But it also seems like no matter where you turn.
He was going to get absorbed by him. But
yeah. So
it was a very long scene of him just spinning around in circles.
Yeah. And so I think he brought up once or twice about the Red Room dream he's had. So it seems like he's dreamt of this like moment. And so I don't know if part of it is just him freaking out, thinking like maybe it's like a dream.
When he first mentioned the Red Room, I thought that was referencing the old woman he saw back in like the wardrobe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the old woman, so the story that Stella was in was the haunted house, and it was her pretty much taking the place of the Sarah. And you see the old woman again, and it just seems like the old woman's just like, I don't know, the grandmother or mother, and she's a snitch, but she looked spooky. Like she was like a ghost herself, but I think she was just a creepy old woman. And so I don't know if there was any real significance with that, because when Stella was in like Sarah's place trying to escape, she sees the old woman. The old woman yells out and says that, Sarah's in the room, and that's when they go to grab her and put Sarah back into the basement. So I think when Chuck was like in the wardrobe and like got out, I think he kind of like sort of entered in a different reality, and the house itself is just like doing whatever it wants, really.
I did look. There's a story called Old Woman, All Skin and Bones.
Yeah.
And so that's the story. It's interesting that he had a glimpse at a different story, and there was a different story woven into it. But apparently she's like a skeletal figure who haunts graveyards at night and is drawn to the living.
Okay.
So, yeah. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, there's more. I'm sure there's other things behind it. I'm not looking it up too much, but that's essentially, she is a scary story, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. And so when you brought up how it seems like, stories read you or whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like each story's related to like one of their fears. So I feel like what you were saying with their like personalities also works, but from what it says here is that Tommy is just always abusing the Scarecrow. He like hates Harold, so Harold goes after him. So I don't know if it's like a fear. It possibly, I don't know.
Right.
But Augie frequently express like what's in the food, and like he's like kind of bringing stuff up about food.
Oh yeah.
With the stew, he just like eats it and Ruth panicking about the spiders. I figured like that was like pretty obvious. She like got bit while at the house. Chuck mentions the nightmare of the Red Room. Ramon, so the Jangly Man goes after Ramon and calls him a coward multiple times. So that's possibly related to Ramon trying to avoid the draft.
Yeah.
And then for Stella, I don't know if it's like a fear, but it seems like she feels like she's like out of place and doesn't belong, so that's why it's why she took Sarah's place in her story. So that's like one rendition, but I feel like there's probably a few ways you could explain that, but it does seem like each story is very specifically related to each person. It's not like a random thing.
Agreed. Yeah.
The fictional town, it may be a reference to Downington, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour from Philly.
Oh.
And
what direction?
West. So towards like Westchester.
Okay.
So they bring that up because Penhurst, the hospital that Sarah is admitted to, is only like half an hour from.
Oh, that was Penhurst. I didn't realize that. That's okay.
Yeah. And Downington's also the location of the Blob, 1958.
Oh, that's fun. 10 years prior. 10 years prior.
So Pennsylvania, I think, is a solid state for horror movies.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a horror movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think the Jangling Man is a mix of two stories, Footsteps and Me Tai Do Ti Tai Walker, which is what he says when his head rolls in. So those are two different stories.
What does that even mean? That phrase?
That story is weird. It's like, because this was one of the ones I read more recently, and I was like, what the fuck? And this is why I say, like, reading it now, it's like not as scary.
Right.
So it's like a little boy with his dog, and they're in this house, this like haunted house, and he keeps hearing that like in the distance, and it's coming closer. And then his dog responds and starts saying something weird in response. And then the creature's getting closer, and then a head falls out from the chimney and rolls over to him, and the dog dies of fright. And like that's the story, and I'm like, what? Like, what does this mean?
What the heck?
So yeah, I don't know. Like maybe it means something, and I'm just like, didn't look more into it, but that's where the story. That's what he's saying. But it's like goofy,
super goofy. Do you know what story I really wish was in? The car hook one, the one with the.
Yeah,
that one would have been good, and I always think of that.
Actually, Slasher. I forgot about that one. Yeah,
yes,
that one.
Yes.
I think the headlights is pretty creepy. It's like following in the car.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of good ones. There's 4 books, I think.
I think there's 3. I was looking it up a little bit.
Yeah. They the artwork was recently updated, and
you did mention this, and it caused a big upheaval. People were not happy.
Yeah,
which
so
I think it's
versions.
I think it's better for them to be less scary, at least for children. Maybe there's the adult version.
Listen, I think it's fair to have 2 versions. I'm not against it. Like, don't get rid of the original, because the artwork's really cool. Like, it's spooky, but it is really cool artwork.
Yeah.
But I don't see a problem with updated art that's less scary.
Right.
'Cause at that point, it kind of goes more with the stories, because the stories really aren't super spooky.
Right.
Some of them are. Some of them are spooky, but most of them are just like kind of silly and a little goofy.
Girl, these stories freaked me out so much when I was younger.
Well,
And
that's like as kids when we were younger, but like, trust me, rereading them.
No,
I'm like,
I believe
okay.
you. I believe you. It probably is nothing in comparison.
The only other fact I have is that as of 2017, the books have sold more than 7 million copies.
Wow.
Has appeared on numerous children's bestseller lists.
Wow.
And has been hailed a cultural touchstone for a generation.
I mean, I believe that for sure. It has definitely rocked a few worlds.
It's it's memorable in good or bad ways.
Yes.
All of us know these stories. So
yeah, unfortunately, it has touched all of our lives in some way or other.
I definitely feel like I have to buy the books, like the trilogies, to have.
I feel like you do too. I'm surprised you don't have them.
I know. I'll have to do that.
So what would you rate this movie?
I don't know. I do like that it's like more intended for teen. Like I kind of wish it was more for us, but I understand why, because it is based off a kid's book.
Yeah.
I'd probably rate it like between 3.5 to like 3.8. You know,
Okay.
I think it's solid. I think there's some really cool practical effects, and I think it's worth watching for that. I'd watch it with, you know, kids or family and stuff if for Halloween, if you want to watch for Halloween. And yeah, you know, the plot itself is fine. It's, you know, whatever. I like the stories. I like the creatures, but you know, it's teens usually.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not a huge teen person, but
Yeah.
I do like it. I do like it, but you know, I wish it was a little better, but it's really not that bad. So
yeah, teen movies that are made more recently are less exciting than teen movies that were made once upon a time. Probably because teen movies that were made once upon, like in our era, were not appropriate for teens.
Agreed. Yeah,
but
I mean, there's no sex, so
right.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I rated it a 2.5.
Okay.
So I just felt like, and maybe it is the teen aspect, I just didn't like the characters.
Yeah.
I was like, everything could have been avoided. Right. It didn't really draw me in. I struggled a little bit. I found myself like wandering mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And the things that were in its benefit was the fact that it was really well done. The artwork was well done. The practical effects were well done. The cinematography was good. I didn't even think the acting wasn't bad. It's not that the acting was bad. It's just that I didn't like the characters. I just so strongly disliked them.
Yeah. I wonder if they should have done like kids, you know?
Yeah,
like the teenagers should have been like kids instead of teens. I don't know.
Might have been more enjoyable, right?
To watch though, because they do like it seems like they do die,
right?
So it might have been like a little too scary. But yeah, I don't know. I think the writing's the weakest part of it. You know, the characters, like you said, doesn't seem too lovable. They're all very kind of surface level.
Yeah,
you know, you get a little bit of each of them, and like that's it. So. Yeah, I don't know. I would have done it differently. I probably would have just like, I probably wouldn't have even done the whole, oh, Sarah writes the stories and they come true type of thing. Right. I would have just had them like happening. Like, it's just a weird little town and weird things happen sometimes. And, you know, I would have done, okay, as, you know, professional.
Yeah, of course.
I would have done an anthology TV show series for Amazon Prime to pick up.
Yeah.
And I would have done an anthology. So
yeah, and then each episode could have been a different story.
Yep.
In the same town.
Yep.
In a small town America. Could be the 60s. I'm fine with that.
Yep.
And yeah, you could have the various things occurring and it just being like, what's this weird little snow globe town and why is it horrible? Yeah. I would have preferred that. Would have been better.
Yeah. I think an anthology would have worked best for this. So
do you know anything else about the whole election? Was that just because of the Vietnam War or were there other that's it?
I think it was just for the Vietnam.
They referenced it so much where I was like, are you just trying to be like, there was a war, guys?
I think that was it.
Oh, that's so lame.
Yeah,
okay.
In case you're like knowledgeable of the
like
time.
Hit me over the head with it. I don't know that Vietnam existed and that there was a war. Got it.
I mean, technically, if this is for like younger
children, okay,
you know,
I guess
about
so.
that in school yet.
I guess.
So that's the hard part. I'm like trying to think. I'm like, okay, like watching from the eyes of a younger person. Like if I was a kid, I probably would have really liked this movie. So
I wouldn't have, but that's because I never liked horror. I don't know if this is going to surprise you, but it's never been my genre.
And that's fine. That's totally fine.
If I knew at age 15 that in 15 years my best friend was going to force me to watch horror movies, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. But here we are.
It's you know, getting you cultured. Horror is so popular.
What?
Horror is so popular.
Yeah, I don't know why, but why people like being scared. It's the worst feeling in the world. One of the worst feelings in the world. Whatever.
One day, with enough horror movies, you'll understand, perhaps.
You think. We'll see about that. Well, for your movie for next week, Ruby is so excited. She barked in the background. It is not. So I decided to go with something more recent because I was thinking about giving this movie to you a while ago because it had come out and it was getting a lot of traction, and I was like, oh, maybe this will get like listeners, right? Maybe this will draw in listeners. But I did it because I didn't love this movie. So this is one that I didn't love, but I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
I'm gonna have you watch Anyone But You. So that's
Sydney's what, sweetie?
Yeah,
your fucking big ass titty,
dude. I know. I have a lot of issues with the over sexualization that happens in this movie, but we're gonna talk about it all next week.
Yeah, poor girl.
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I want to say that I think were done good and things that I didn't like that were done poorly.
Okay.
So yeah,
both like mean blonde characters.
Yep.
All right, it's fine. I'm open.
Hey,
to
Glenn
it.
Powell is they're both attractive, you know.
Glenn Powell's okay.
He's
okay.
I told you this. He's described as ordinary hot. He's like hot in the way that your neighbor can be hot, not in the way that you see a celebrity as hot.
Yeah,
no offense,
I
Glenn
agree with
Powell.
that.
Yeah,
that's correct. That's correct.
We're gonna have to break it down next week because a lot of people think that when women critique this movie, they're critiquing it because of Sydney Sweeney. Yeah. And it's not that. It's the way that she's represented that bothers me.
Join us next week as we talk about the sexualization of attractive actors.
Yes, in Hollywood. Oh, I have to give my snapshot of the movie though. So
oh yes.
Yeah. So it's a retelling. Anyone But You is a retelling of the Shakespeare story Much Ado About Nothing. It basically tells the story of Bea and Ben, who meet one day, hit it off, but due to a series of unfortunate events, become enemies and are forced to reconnect at the wedding of one of their sisters and one of their best friends. So they're both just kind of like roped into the situation. And in order to make everyone feel more comfortable about their enemyship, they pretend to be in a relationship and hijinks ensue.
Okay. All right.
The premise is great.
Yeah, it does sound like I'm not a big fan of fake dating, but I do like a Shakespeare retelling. So
yeah, me too. So right. I'm curious. There are a lot of
maybe I'll like
ups and downs. You might. Yeah. So we'll see. Anyway, Anyone But You is available on Netflix currently.
Sweet.
And everywhere else you have to pay for it.
Not sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Netflix.
Yeah.
We have to pay for Netflix.
I don't have Netflix right now. I am fed up with their BS.
They're garbage.
It's just baloney. They've really gone downhill. So
yeah, that's what greed.
Yeah,
that's what happens with greed.
They'll do it.
Anyway, thanks for listening to How Do You Watch This? You can find us on Instagram, How Do You Watch This, and TikTok, How Do You Watch, or email us at howdoyouwatchthis@gmail.com. If you like the show, support us by giving us a review or recommending to a friend. And
Thanks.
we will have a very good discussion next week, so tune in.
Yeah.